Hello, everyone. My name is TJ Sterling. I'm the CEO of Ray Comics, and this is the 11th annual Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival virtual panel for Comics to Film, the Multimedia Age. Thank you so much for joining us. We have some amazing panelists today for you guys. This is pre-recorded, so if you have questions or concerns, please reach out to the panelists afterwards, or if you'd like to leave comments on the video, you're more than welcome to. Joining me to the right of me is Anthony Piper, Rodney Barnes, and David Crownson. Gentlemen, please go across the board and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what's going on with you in your career right now.
Okay. Well, me starting first. Okay, my name is Anthony Piper. I'm an illustrator and writer. I'm mostly known for the indie comic known as Trill League. But I've also done, some other projects where I've, done character design for series for Fox, such as X Cop and Major Lazer. I've also illustrated and written for characters such as Spider-Man, X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy. And right now, just kind of hustling in Hollywood, trying to get Trill League turned into an animated series. So
I'm Rodney Barnes. Primarily a screenwriter, shows like The Boondocks and Wu-Tang and American Saga, and currently Winning Time, Rise of the Lakers Dynasty at HBO. In the comics world, I write, I have a book, creator-owned book, Philadelphia, another book, Monarch. I'm currently writing a Batman Black Label series, The Mandalorian for Marvel, Lucasfilm, a few other books. Couple of movies. That's me.
Nothing at all. No, nothing impressive.
yeah, right.
Nothing impressive. Wu-Tang. I've never heard of Wu-Tang. No. Like that sounds dope as hell. Holy shit. Anywho, but a little bit about me. Hi, I'm David Crownson. I'm the writer and creator of Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer and the founder of Kingwood Comics. I'm from New Jersey. What else? Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer is being developed to be a television series with Prentice Penny and Sebastian Jones over at this independent company called Disney that no one's ever heard about. That's right, I tricked that mouse into letting me make a show about killing racists. And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Amazing. It's a pleasure, fellas, to have you on the panel. Thanks so much for sharing your talent and your time with us. Kind of want to start this panel just with something a little organic. We're going to go off the cuff, but we're going to be directed at the same time. So one thing I want to ask everyone, and anybody can kind of jump in and as they like, I guess, if kind of as a cadence, if someone's talking, maybe you mute your mic so we don't have any interference. What is something that you all have been inspired by lately? Can be anything. I'm just curious. Share with us. If anybody wants to take the mic, go right ahead.
I think for me, being physically grounded and like just sound in my body, whether that's me taking a minute to just meditate or exercise, also listening to like random conversations or just conversating with random friends, because usually if I'm having like writer's block on something, I'll just say, let me call somebody and just catch up with them and see how they're doing. And through that art of just kind of like letting go, something will get something will get lit up inside where I'm like, oh wait, like that's what I need to do for this particular character dialogue. So yeah, exercise and procrastinating with friends is what inspires me.
I guess for myself, I'm inspired right now by collaborating with different artists. Right now I'm working with a writer named Leanne Bowen. And she's helping me co-produce Trill League right now, and just kind of learning the ropes, learning what it means to write television structure and stuff like that. And that's primarily, I usually gain energy from working with other creatives, so being in a position to be able to learn kind of like how that structure works, and when it comes to writing, and getting advice about what a writer's room looks like, kind of how to, like, one of the things, I mean, this is super minor, but kind of how to write an outline. Like I wrote an outline before, but she has like a certain format in terms of how she writes her television outlines, and I was kind of like, oh, I was like, that's, I like how she intermixes, like, story with some dialogue and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess primarily right now, that's kind of like my only inspiration, just because I haven't really been taking in like a lot of media per se. I've just kind of taken like a sabbatical from like television and movies right now. So
I guess for me, the type of work that's coming my way, the types of things being offered are probably things that, if you were to ask me when I was a kid, to be in the position to be able to write some of the stuff that I'm writing, I would have said, this is never going to happen. This must not be real. I think to be able to operate in some of the spaces that I'm operating in, it speaks to the entire journey of going from being a PA and struggling and living in my car and doing all the things I had to do, and then being able to reflect back on all the people that have helped me along the way, and sort of this sense of responsibility to do my best work, and sort of be disciplined and stoic in the way that I go about doing what I do. I'd say there's a degree of inspiration in just being grateful to be in the position sort of that I've evolved into. So I would say that.
Incredible. Inspiration kind of pulls from so many different places: work, colleagues, friends, even the business the business we're in, and even different creative endeavors. Very curious. So what was your favorite comic book growing up?
Favorite comic book growing up. I really loved Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis. I only because like I started reading comics when I was a kid, but then actively buying my own comic books because there were so many. Just working like double shifts at like this grocery store when I was in high school, just to afford even getting comic books. Like, also Daredevil was a big favorite of mine. Daredevil Yellow, by Jeff Loeb. Also, and again, because Brian Michael Bendis wrote like 8 different comic books, like in the early 2000s. So yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man, Daredevil, Death of Superman, Return of Superman, even though it's silly. Yeah, those are my favorite comic books growing up. Anthony Piper, go.
I would have to say my favorite comic, man, I would have to say Uncanny X-Men. That was actually like the first comic that I started collecting when I was a kid, and that's what introduced me to the world of superheroes. So, I'll always have a special place, for the X-Men. Particularly, I was, I started when Chris Claremont was, he was kind of toward the tail end of his run. But then I really got into it. Like, I started collecting heavily when Joe Mad was illustrating Uncanny X-Men. So I think I have every single issue that he illustrated. And that's what really sort of like pushed me toward wanting to draw. Like, that was sort of who I emulated my style after when I first started drawing, comic book characters and stuff. So yeah, I would definitely say X-Men, but also, like David said, there was a time period after Joe Mad stopped drawing comics that I kind of fell off of collecting comics. And then there was a period when I got kicked out of college, which is a long story, basically due to, not having funds and stuff like that. So the only thing I could afford was comics, at the time. And so I would just go to the store every week buying comics. And then I never really had read or was interested in Avengers, but at the time Bendis was writing Avengers, and it just had like this dark, gritty, like street, feel to it. And that's what really kind of got me into Avengers, and I started following Brian Michael Bendis, and I actually think he was kind of the spark that I had into actually being interested in writing comics, just because I liked his story writing style. But yeah, so X-Men and Avengers.
Well, it's clear I'm the oldest one here. So I'm going to go back to, I'd say Swamp Thing has always been my dude. The Alan Moore run primarily sort of changed my life, made me want to be a writer. I had a Daredevil Frank Miller fascination also as a kid, which led to like the Dark Knight Returns and those types of things. I mean, I was a big follower of writers primarily. I was amazed at how, just in 20 stories and 20 pages, you could grab my imagination. It was just the most amazing thing. When I was a kid, I mean, it was art, Neil Adams covers sort of just, I would steal those at the corner store if I didn't have enough lunch money. It became a test of wills between lunch and Neil Adams. But big time fan of Alan Moore from the beginning all the way, like Watchmen and all that kind of stuff. But it started at Swamp Thing for me.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, Rodney, man. I was going to drop that jewel at the end of this interview, but since you got to it now, I appreciate that because Swamp Thing is my absolute favorite comic character out of all of them. Swamp Thing to me is the most complex. It's obviously kind of a mix of like horror, superhero. The Alan Moore run is, well, actually, I got introduced to Swamp Thing by the TV show, the little cartoon. Because as a kid, it came with the toy, and it was a whole plot for marketing and selling the toys, the glow in the dark ones, the this, the that. But anyways, that got me into the comics. That really made me feel like, yo, this character is so complex, it's so layered, and I don't think a run of Swamp Thing has been as good since then. I mean, I think the run that the last one, the Green, that had Pascal. I can't remember his name. Anyways, the more recent one where Swamp Thing gets wings and he's got the horn of crowns and stuff, and he's literally the king or the emperor of the green. Like, it's really powerful run too, but still that Alan Moore run is really, really powerful. I think for me too, it was X-Men was really big. Spider-Man really got me into it, but X-Men was that thing that was edgy. You trade the cards at school or you talk about it with your boys, who's got the better powers, this and this and that. And it was always something super exciting and edgy about X-Men that made me want to do more. Plus, they were the most kind of like ethnically diverse group of characters. And that kind of brings me to my next question too, for you guys. I know for me, what really kind of put me on my trajectory as a creator in comics was just seeing a lack of diversity and also wanting to see myself in these stories, in these different types of scenarios. And it kind of is what got me going into making my own comics. And I'm curious, each one of you guys, what was something that put you on the trajectory you are now in terms of making comics, in terms of being a writer, and just really what sparked that flame for you?
I think for me, it started out, Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer just started out as initially just as a fun idea. And I loved that the imagery of this petite Black woman killing racist. And just seeing that expressed in a comic book splash page seemed really exciting and cool. And then I think around the time, like, when politics changed in America and, Trump became president and lots of racism was blatant and emboldened. I remember talking to a friend of mine just after the election, and she just said to me, like, man, like, just having a tough time. What are you working on? And I said, I'm working on this idea called Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. And she's like, I need to see that. Like right now, like with everything that's happening, I need to see like a dark-skinned Black woman kicking ass right now. Like, you have to make that. And then I realized, okay, this isn't about me anymore in this fun idea that I had at like 2 a.m., now I think this can resonate and spread. So I'm not just making this for myself. And yeah, then that's my story. That was my takeoff into making comic books. And thankfully people have, loved the comic book and have enjoyed it. So yeah, we're gonna keep making it.
I think for myself, man, I never actually intended to draw comics. I've always been into cartoons. Like when I was a kid, my intent, like, I thought I was going to be working in cartoons. Over the course, early teens, young adult, like I started to gain other interests such as music, video game. That's actually what I went to college for, was to be a video game designer. However, since I was a little kid, one of my favorite shows was In Living Color, and Keenan Ivory Wayans is like one of my favorite writers, comedy writers of all time. Like, they influenced my comedy style and, the things it is that I find funny. So, all his movies, I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, Don't Be a Menace, Hollywood Shuffle, all that stuff, man. And so since I was a kid, I was just kind of like absorbing like that comedy style. And I would always be like, I was known as a goof when I was a kid. I was and I was always thinking of like skits and stuff like that. So I think that kind of like, I wasn't realizing like how my, like that comedy stuff was like building up inside of me. So anyway, I had told the story about how I got kicked out of college and I needed to make some money. So I was kind of like, well, I'm good at drawing. So I was like, I'll just start drawing my own comics. And when I started drawing, like, I wasn't necessarily drawing in like your traditional superhero style. Like, I didn't have that Marvel DC style. I had more of an anime influence style, going back to being influenced by Joe Madureira, but, also anime. Also the Boondocks. Boondocks was a very influential cartoon when I was in college because I saw characters that look like us drawn in the anime as style. So all those things kind of, the confluence of all those things came together in Trill League. And, that kind of like just sparked, I guess, sort of my trajectory as far as becoming like a creator / artist / writer that, kind of more so moves in the comedy space. But, I also do like, action superhero-esque stuff. So, I would just say, the convergence of all those things coming together, influencing me, just kind of created this one product that, is kind of just like the merge of everything it is that I love when it comes to like comedy, superhero, anime, music, all that stuff.
I think for me, I'm a pretty big reader as well of novels and things. And I was a huge Stephen King fan coming up, and Richard Matheson and other horror writers. And I never saw Black people, and this was as a kid, I never saw Black people depicted in a way that I thought was like real to the world that I knew. So it was more of a cultural thing than anything else. It wasn't, even if you had a lot of Black people in the story, it never felt authentic to me. So I felt like if I ever had an opportunity to write stories, I would sort of write to my experience in the way people did things and the way people talked and the way people moved and the decisions that they made. So it was really more a thing of wanting a degree of authenticity. And you realize sometimes, in television, there are a lot of gatekeepers. It's a lot of times when I want to talk about the Black experience from my point of view, there can be pushback as to what other cultures believe the Black experience should be or how it should be depicted. So you find yourself making compromises as to how you tell a story because you want to get it on the air. Oftentimes, I don't have the final say and control as to how a thing gets on the air. So when it came to comics, outside of working in the big two and being able to have creator-owned titles, it was almost like a cathartic thing of being able to write a story in a way and tell a story in a way that I wanted to tell the story. And certainly in the Philadelphia books and that type of thing, and wanting to deal with human constructs like father-son, but still have them behave in such a way that was familiar to what I understand culture to be for me. And I say that because there's not one way to be a Black person. Everybody has a different experience in a way geographically sometimes, and you come up in the South or the North or the West, it's all different in every way. But there's some things that overlap. And I wanted to be able to speak to a layering and complete three-dimensional human being, and not so much just a caricature of an idea of what the larger idea of what sometimes Black people were depicted as being, specifically as it pertained to race. And when I was a kid and I would read like the Luke Cage books, and he was sort of like a Blaxploitation knockoff of what somebody, you knew there wasn't, you might have Black people like, I know Billy Graham was drawing them, and other people, and to lesser or greater degrees, every time there was a story about him, more often than not, it was about race. whether it was some sucker and the cops and you holding me down and, those types of things. And I wanted stories where, like Batman, Batman was mad because his parents died when he was a kid and now he's going to fight crime in Gotham. And not to say that I don't want to deal with race or social issues, but it felt like burdensome to always have to deal with social issues, that you couldn't have just an adventure story for the sake of having an adventure story, or some of the things, the cross-sectional dimensional stories and narratives that you see in other books. And if I deal with race, it just so happens to be within the idea of the story that I'm trying to tell. So, for all of those things, like I said, the lesser or greater degrees were motivators in saying that, okay, if the opportunity ever comes to be able to control a narrative, that I would want to control it from a place that felt authentic to me.
Amen. That's incredible. And that kind of brings me to my next point too. When I think about Philadelphia and this new incredible book that you have called Blacula that is out, I think about, just the art, the story, everything about it is really incredible. I mean, I'm a humongous fan of Blaxploitation films and just, the actors. My favorite is JD's Revenge. Absolutely love that movie.
I know Glenn Turman. He's a good dude. I know. I cast him in American Gods. He played the preacher for us in one episode where we were resurrecting a character. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's incredible to share. I didn't know you knew him, but yeah, Glenn's I think one of those incredible actors that's iconic. That
Cooley High. Yeah, you can go to Cooley High. And, all of that.
Do anything. And that particular movie, and then all the Pam Grier movies, of course, just being a man and loving beautiful Black women are queens. Shout out to Pam Grier and all the folks that are running the Schomburg, all the beautiful women that are taking care of this panel as well as the event itself. But yeah, I was going to say, let's see, I wanted to ask you about when it comes to Blacula and the film versus the comic, like the difference between what you're trying to pull, what the clear distinction between the two that you're trying to make is what I really want to get into. I'd love to share with us if you could.
Yeah, I mean, a little backstory on me and Blacula. I was a kid when my mother took me to see Blacula. I was a huge fan of the Hammer films and the Universal monster movies. The Hammer films with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, more often vampire films more than anything else. Universal monsters, Frankenstein, werewolf, Dracula. Huge fan of those. Never saw Black people unless it was like a cab driver that was like, he went that way, but never part of the overall narrative. And, I was up late one night because I didn't have good parental supervision, and I saw what was a trailer for Blacula. And they weren't like trailers like today. Like today you get 5% of the plot, you get of everything. But there was just, it was a brother that was vampire, and he was Blacula, and I forget the brother, Adolf Caesar, the late great Adolf Caesar was the voice. He's a bad man and he's a vampire, and it was like, oh man, I gotta be a part of this. I gotta see this. So my mother took me to see the movie, and it was the first time I'd been in a theater full of Black people having that experience, that stereotypical experience where Black people throw popcorn at the screen and talk back to the movie. And as a kid, it just sort of brought me in of an experience. And, a lot of people are critical of Blaxploitation because it was a lot of pimps. It was a lot of that stuff, drug dealers and all of those types of things. But under it, there was this subversive feeling that I think was connected to the civil rights movement, post the civil rights movement, the Black nationalist movement. It's like you got a lot of that, the way the big afros and the fashion and the way people talk, there was this rebellious feeling that was under it. And I think if you're building a bridge between what those films, not having Black people in movies in the 50s and the early 60s very much, to Blaxploitation in the late 60s, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song and those types of movies, I think it was a necessary step to go to where we are today, where you have Black creatives making movies and that type of thing. And so fell in love with Blacula, but as I got older and I saw some of the problematic elements to some of the story, and some of the things of where even the name Blacula, it's like his skin color was part of it. I understand from a marketing place that Blacula sounds like Dracula, so I get it. But just within the narrative, the first 10 minutes grabbed me of Prince Mamuwalde going to Count Dracula, who was a dignitary, for help stopping the slave trade. Thought that was like, man, that's, even as a kid, that was like, all right, this is kind of cool. But then it went to, all right, you're going to go to Compton and you're going to start biting people. And as a, just an idea of a vampire, and, you know, in that type of setting, all right, that's cool. But I always thought that there was a lot more to it. And I thought the late, great William Marshall, who played Prince Mamuwalde, I felt like he had the same gravitas that Bela Lugosi did playing Count Dracula. So if you create a setting and you create a certain type of thinking, I thought you could elevate the idea of Prince Mamuwalde to a modern day, to where it felt, and unfortunately, I think there are a lot of parallels to the 70s to today with social conditions and a lot of the things that we're dealing with, you know, in the world. And I felt like if I could key in and touch on some of those things, that there would be a degree of familiarity between the Blacula of the 70s and the Blacula of today. And I could extricate some of the problematic elements and sort of highlight some of the things that were virtues, and give him a more sophisticated world to operate in, and hopefully for more stories to come. But yeah, it was just more of an honor to be able to play in that place. I got the rights for a couple more years, so I'd love to do a couple more volumes. But it was really more of taking something that in my childhood always sort of, I had a love, not hate, but a love issue with, and wanting to be able to take it and do it in a way that I thought brought honor to the original people who, and I feel that way about a lot of blaxploitation. You had a lot of great actors doing the best that they could with what they were given, with low budgets and sometimes scripts that weren't written by people who looked like them, and they had to take it and make it something like soul food. You know, you got the scraps and you put seasoning on it and you made it into something. And so, you know, not having the same restraints on me in present day, I wanted to try my best to take and do positive things with the material.
It's powerful, and thank you for sharing that. I'm super looking forward to the next few volumes. And you know, since we're on the topic of horror, I want to jump over to David and talk about Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer, one of the absolute best indie comic books on the market. It's really, really incredible stuff. Great art, tons of amazing story that's funny, insightful, action-packed, and just dramatic. I think, you know, David, since I've known David for many, many years, just like, you know, I've known Anthony for quite a while as well, and getting to know brother Rodney now, which I'm honored to do so, that everybody on this panel, hustlers, just hard workers that have really put in the time. David, you know, being in Jersey, you know, having to sometimes I've read or listened to interviews and read stories and even heard the stories from you in person about how you've had to really sacrifice to make your comic book, to make this story. So tell us a little bit more about Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer, the trajectory of the story, and what you really want to do with this character and why it inspires you.
Just the real life story of Harriet Tubman is already compelling, you know, without, you know, the fantastical, like the demons and the witches and the werewolves. I you know, did it because I wanted to make something also different and see about really investigating like what an allegory, just the allegory opportunities of like, oh, I can say something now about racism. I can say something about white supremacy and express that through this Django Unchained meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer lens. And also, I think, well, now we have more of Harriet Tubman in media. I think before, like Underground hadn't come out season 2, where Harriet Tubman is like a prominent figure and a prominent character in that season. And then, you know, the Harriet film, and like before, again, there was no Harriet Tubman frame of reference, and just reading about what she had to go through and how she did it, and also being a fugitive. Like, she was considered the most dangerous person alive in America. Like, there was a bounty on her head for I think people have kind of overdone. They've said like 50,000, 40,000. I think it was like something around like 900 dollars, but people were looking for her and looking to murder this woman, and they never caught her. They never, no slave died on her watch. And I just wanted to, um, one of the things that really inspired me was there's this story that I've told it a billion times, but I love it. I'm like, that's Harriet Tubman. You know, whenever I'm writing, I'm always trying to find like, you know, a lot of my characters are quirky or they have something about them that makes them quirky. And in my research with with looking up Harriet, um, there wasn't much insight into her personality, and it was mostly just like she was serious and had it together all the time. I'm like, all right, like I still got to make this comic book, and I still got to make a character whose name happens to be Harriet Tubman. And there was one story that I love where Harriet Tubman's leading his family to Canada, and it was like a family, a slave family, and the father was having a panic attack. He doesn't know he's having a panic attack, but he's like freaking out because he thinks he's made like a huge mistake, like letting this woman that he's never met before take his family and move them to freedom. And he's like, man, like we had it good. You know, we were at least allowed to sleep inside and have shoes, which is like crazy, ridiculous. And we're gonna get caught. We're gonna die, and that's it. And he started to like freak out. And Harriet Tubman like walked up to him, and people thought, oh no, she's gonna shoot him because she was known for having like a gun on her. And then she like put her hands on his shoulders and started talking to him and really listening to him. And then she made him laugh. No one knows what she said, but like he started laughing. And I just like, I'm like, wait, that's a hero in the face of like ultimate adversity. And the ultimate horror of white supremacy in the mid to late 1850s. You have the time and space to show up as a mother figure who's funny. I'm like, okay, that's who I'm going to hone into that essence. I'm going to express that in my comic book, that no matter what, it's all about who you are. Like, yes, racism, white supremacy, all that exists, but who are you in the face of that? And yeah, just taking the time. I'm glad I got to talk with other biographers as well who wrote, Catherine Clinton, who had written a few of Harriet Tubman's biographies, like gave me access to some things that I normally couldn't find like in her book, just so I could like use for my comic. So yeah, that's my long answer.
Incredible. And yeah, I've heard this story before, and I think it never made me. I always remembered it as being really an integral part of just who that character was, and just how important it was to the story and what she was really about. So thank you for sharing that. Riley Wilson has just joined us. Riley, what's going on, man? Anthony, jumping to you. Man, I got to tell you, bro, like Trill League is one of my absolute favorite comic books. I'm not even saying this just to say it. I'm saying it because it really is absolutely incredible in terms of the art. I've had the opportunity to work with you and see how you think in terms of creating a cover, and how you conceptualize and tell stories. And it does have that Boondocks feel, but it's got that anime feel. I didn't know you were a Joe Mad fan. Joe Mad's one of my favorite artists too. So tell us more about Trill League and really why it came to be, how it came to be, and what really inspired you to make this really incredible story.
I mean, to be honest, it all happened by accident. I had originally moved to California to try to work professionally in comic books. And I had a connection who knew Ryan Benjamin, and we were supposed to connect. I wasn't familiar with the way, how to get work in the comic industry at the time. I was just looking for any opportunity at the time. Like I had said earlier, I got kicked out of college. I wasn't making any money. I was working as a manager at a Quick Lube. So, I was just like, I'm kind of wasting my life. So I was like, and my passion had always been to be, creative. I had always been, dabbling, doing something creative, whether it was making music, airbrushing, painting, drawing, whatever. So anyway, I had moved to California. I got a chance to experience how expensive California is. So my little $3,500 that I had in saving got eaten up pretty quick for rent. So I had to move back to Chicago after 4 months, not really getting very far. Not to mention, and I'll be honest, I wasn't that good of an artist at the time as well. I had stated earlier, I didn't have that Marvel or DC style. So came back home. Came back home to Chicago. And I just started, kind of drawing, posting online. I was a little bit, a little depressed, at the time. And, at the time I was watching a lot of stand-up comedy. That was what was really kind of just, perking me up at the time, particularly Cat Williams, one of my, favorite comedians of all time. And so I just started kind of telling jokes. I had created, first I was trying to hip hopify X-Men characters, Marvel characters. That was kind of failing. I decided to do it with DC characters. I posted online, it went viral, right? And people were enjoying it. So then I just started to, kind of add more to the characters. Then I started to actually write for the characters. And then that's when it really blew up. As a result of that, people were really, this was at the time where there was some troubles in the water with Boondocks. I think it was season 4. And people were kind of telling me, they were like, oh, this is the next Boondocks. And, that kind of went to my head. I was like, oh, okay, all right, cool, And actually, I had the opportunity to work with Rodney at first. We had got introduced through Woody McClain. I was working with, because he was working, I think, on Husbands of Hollywood with Jesse Collins. And he actually gave me a lot of great advice for the series. So anyway, I had moved back out to California, and the comic started to go viral, and I met with this one brother named Jermaine Johnson who worked for 3 Arts. Now, at the time, I didn't know what 3 Arts was. And I met with that brother, and I will say that meeting changed my life because, like I said, my intention was just to be a character designer, was just to work in animation as an artist. And this brother, he asked me, he's like, have you ever thought about writing for television? And I was like, no, never kind of crossed my mind. And he was like, I think you're pretty good. He was like, I think you could do it. And we started working with each other. At the time, I was struggling. I couldn't get it. I thought I was kind of on a bit of a, time thing. I had to, the first thing it is that I submitted to him had to be of quality, and I couldn't get it. And so I got frustrated, and I was kind of just like, yo, I can't do this. I was like, yo, it's cool. I was like, I just moved out to California. I was like, I'm working for Marvel. I'm working for these animation studios. I'm cool. But that conversation, man, and the belief that brother had in me, man, it really made me started to, believe that I could write. So I started to, really study television, started, paying attention to structure, how to tell jokes and stuff like that. So anyway, I formatted my comic like it was a television show. And I submitted and I gave it to him. And I was kind of like, yo, I was like, this is one of the greatest, pieces of work that I ever created, because it just embodied everything from, the comedy to the music. Even there was in the back of the comic, one of the things that a lot of people ask me, at the end of the comic, there's 10 pages of white space before you get to the actual ending, almost like a Marvel, movie where, they show, the after credit scene. However, I formatted that book like it was an album, because the book looks like an album cover. And on some albums, they'll have secret tracks where if you play track 18 or whatever at the end, there's a lot of white space. And that's what I call it, white space. So you just flip through it, and then you actually get to another end of the story. You think it's the end, and you just flip, and it's like, there's nothing here, there's nothing here, there's nothing here. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of the story. So anyway, I had just formatted this thing, man, and I gave it to him, and from there, he set me up with a deal with 50 Cent. We pushed the project out, we actually wrote some scripts for Quibi at the time that kind of fell through. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the story of Quibi, but I think that opportunity that I had to write for them showed them what it is that I could do, because, everyone at Lionsgate, everyone at Quibi, my manager, everyone was like, oh, this is a show. Even though it's short form, they were like, this is a show. This is really good. We see, what the themes that you have, how you can take different topics and, expound on them, in the superhero universe, but also make them culturally relevant. So yeah, man, it's really just been a journey, for me. artistically discovering, you know, who it is that I am, and what it is that I'm good at, man. And yeah, it's just been, like I say, it was just like, you know, it's almost like destiny in a sense. I almost think I try not to think of it like that, but it really is, because like I said, since I was a kid, I said I was going to work in animation. But, you know, that was just a, you know, a small portion of my adolescence, because I started to gravitate toward other things, music, airbrushing, all sorts of other things. But basically all those things started to, you know, culminate into, you know, this artistic endeavor, you know, in terms of trying to make it in Hollywood. So yeah, man, it's just all a happy accident, but I guess it was meant to be in some ways, you know?
Yeah, the real recognize real. I mean, I feel like a lot of the projects that you've done, whether it's even like that one that you did with Uzo with Jason Derulo, you just had some really big, incredible, like cool projects, and they obviously see the potential and where it's at currently, what, you know, what your art can do, what your stories can do here and now, and so on and so forth. So I kind of want to get into a point, because we've only got about 13 minutes left for the gentlemen who have been here since the beginning, and then we'll get into Riley. We'll get into more of what's going on with Little Apple after that. If you can hang out a little longer with me, I appreciate it. David, Rodney, Anthony, anybody who wants to address this, people who are, because there's kind of two ways you can do it. It's either you're making comics first and then you're writing films, or you're kind of using that as a gateway to get to films, or you're writing films and doing that first and then getting into comics as ways of developing IP. So I'm kind of curious, for anybody who's working in the space, for the three of you guys, how do you guys go about, like, continue to develop your ideas, but also finding representation, networking with the right people, making sure you're in the right rooms? Like, what's essential? Is it essential to get a manager? Is it essential to get an agent? Is it, you know, good to work with an agency, whether it's like what is it called, a CAA, or I think I got that right, or what's the
Yeah.
other one, Endeavor, WME,
WME.
Endeavor.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you guys can talk about more of the logistical business side of film and creating your IP to go with that, I think everyone love to hear that.
We'll make the comic book first. I mean, and I think for me, I just wanted to make the comic and make as many cool chapters as I could. I wasn't really thinking about until like people kept talking about it, even though like my background is in film and TV. At the time, I'm like, that'll probably take me like 20 or something years to make. So let me just make this comic and make it as great as it can be. And you know, I think managers, agents, they will find you. Like my first agent found me from my Kickstarter, and just I think his assistant emailed me. And that also goes along with like my first managers. They all found me on Kickstarter. Sharing your work, showing your work on social media too. Like, you know, I've had the big, I won't say who, but I've had people who, you know, run, you know, big companies like reach out to me like via Instagram, you know, because they saw something that I posted. And yeah, you're just being really loud about your work and sharing it on all forms of social media, but also still making time to create and do the work, and hone your craft as a creative, whether that's in writing or being an illustrator as well. And also, you know, surround yourself with like a community of people that you trust and people that are team you. You know, like I connected with my entertainment lawyer with like a really good friend of mine, you know, and this lawyer is great. And that was because, you know, my friend is awesome. And just thought, oh, okay, like I think he should help you out with this next phase of your career. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Rodney, jump in on this, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, something David just said is really, really important. You know, make the thing first. I think you're way more valuable when you actually have something to sell that's tangible versus an idea that you're hoping to get off the ground. I think people look at you differently. And I think something that Anthony said too about when he was first here about being self-aware enough to know that you need to get better at what it is that you do. being able to have an honest assessment of yourself, I think goes a long way, that when the opportunity comes, you make the most of it. In regards to representation, I don't know if my story is fair because it's for a different era. It's before social media and before the internet became what it became. It was there, but it wasn't in the same way that it is now. I actually got my first writing gig on the show My Wife and Kids, and an agent saw my episode and thought it was really good, and I started talking to agents, had no idea how the whole agency thing worked. But, I always wanted to be in comics. It's kind of weird. It usually goes the other way around, that, people start in comics and want to be in TV. I think it's changed a little bit now, where people who were always fans of comics, now it goes the other way. I started with comics. I was doing a show Runaways for Marvel, 2016, 2017, somewhere around then. And they were happy with my work and were trying to keep me around because I had another offer. And I said, and they couldn't give me as much money as I wanted to have. So that I was like, if you can talk to Marvel Publishing and get me a shot at writing a comic book, I will be happy, and I may stay a little longer. And they got me a shot, and I did Falcon. And the thing there was, I learned that comics were a lot harder than I thought they were to do, that there's a different discipline that I needed to get better. And so really my first 3 books, Falcon, Quincredible, and Lando Double or Nothing, the Star Wars book, were really more like boot camp for me, and learning how to find my own voice and learning how to find my own, what is it I do in comics, and so it took a minute until I figured that part out. But as far as representation, I would say, again, echoing what David said, the more you do and the louder you promote what it is that you do, people see the thing, like, talking about Trill League, you see it, that it's there the way, 3 Arts was like, there's a show here that someone, now you can get your stuff out there, and people will say, there's a writer here, there's an artist here, there's a talent here. And I've been in Hollywood for a minute now, and I can say that there aren't enough talented people. And that sounds weird because there's so many people. But, when I first got here, I thought everybody must be a genius, and I really haven't met one yet. What I've met is a lot of people who work really, really hard and push themselves and are disciplined. And it's not always the most talented person. It's the person that's the most committed that gets better and better and better. And I think the same way, that spirit that you cultivate over time with work ethic and all of that, that if you promote your stuff properly and you're not an asshole, that eventually you'll find the right people will find you. And I know that's anxiety producing, because you want, like in the regular world, if you want a job, you go into the place, you fill out an application or send in your resume, and you get the job or you don't get the job. In Hollywood, there's no real structure. There's no real, there are no rules. You could talk to 50 different people and they got into Hollywood 50 different ways. But I think that if, again, in today's world with social media, and the same way David said too, people have reached out to me with legitimate opportunities, because again, I'm old. I don't believe social media is a real thing, but people have reached out to me and with real things. And I'm like, okay, usually I send them to somebody else and then they go see if it's real. But yeah, there are real opportunities that are there. And I think it's just a matter of being able to do the work and make sure the work is the best representation of who you are as an artist.
Thank you, Rodney. I actually have one other quick question just to kind of go on top of that, was the mental toughness that you have to have. I mean, again, you and I have met each other.
Oh my God. I got a therapist. I got pills. I got all kinds of stuff. This thing in my forehead, I didn't have that when I first got here, but I got it now.
Because for anybody who's watching who hasn't met Rodney, Rodney's like a gentle giant. He's the biggest person in the room, but he's one of the nicest, coolest, like down to earth cast who's really like brilliant with the work that he does. He knows what he's talking about. So I mean, but I know he's tough. You can feel the mental toughness.
I got 4 or 5 good fights left in me. After I may as well shoot me in the back. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But no, I was going to say, if you could speak to the mental toughness of being in Hollywood, being in an industry that chews up and spits people out all the time. Like, how do you navigate this?
I actually think, thank you for the question and thank you for the compliment. I think sometimes that's the thing I wish they taught in HBCUs and film schools more. I don't know if they do. I didn't get taught it, even though I love the schools that I went to and all of that. Oftentimes, I think we're connected to this idealism and romance when it comes to being a creator and an artist and what it's going to be. And every once in a while, people say, "Oh, it's tough," and then they go back to the romance, and they really don't focus in on what it takes and what this place really is. And the biggest thing that I learned really quickly is everybody in Hollywood lies to lesser or greater degrees. And you have to be able to discern who's telling the lie, like who's the best one. Like there've been moments where I went into a meeting and I thought I got a promotion. I really got fired. And I had no idea that until my agent called me when I got in the car. Because there's a way that executives and networks and studios talk that they don't want to make anybody mad. They want to stay in a good political place, and they speak to you in a way that unless you're cultured to it, you don't get it in the same way. And there are people who will take advantage of your naivete and your desire to just do. Like, we want the job so badly and we want to be in it so badly that you end up giving up a lot more than you typically would. And I don't think people oftentimes realize their value. You're thinking because you walk into this beautiful building and you're sitting in a wonderful office that you don't have any power, or you don't have any leverage, and you immediately give it up just because of what you want, your desire on the other side. For me, getting used to the word no, I've heard no. You're talking to me because of the 20 or 30 yeses, but not because of the 10,000 no's. When things didn't go well, when people didn't tell me the truth, when my heart was broken, when people I thought were really, really close to me weren't telling me the truth, or decided to take actions that I thought weren't in the best interest of our relationship, both business and personal. That takes a lot when you come from a world that seems, if you're looking for fair and justice, this probably isn't the place for you. And you have to harden yourself emotionally while still being a human being as you go through the journey. It's a difficult balance of being able to separate the part of the work and the environment of work and then your personal life, which is the part that's real, your family, your friends, the interpersonal connections that you make along the way, your worship to your God or lack thereof, whatever it is that makes you feel human. Oftentimes you have to sort of figure out what that life balance is going to be for you, because this place will test you. It will test you in a myriad of ways. It will ask you to make compromises that I've seen some people not be able to make. And when I say that, sometimes they're just artistic and creative compromises that, a truth and you want to express that truth, but you're operating in a place that because they're paying you, they have an idea of what that truth is. And all of these conversations that play in your head and play with your insecurities and play with, the trauma receptors of when you were coming up and all of these things and what you thought this place was going to be versus what it is. And just being able to make peace with that and not take it personal is really, really, really difficult. And no one teaches you. It's almost like being a parent. No one teaches you or tells you that this is what it's going to be until you get in it and you experience it. And you think about when Anthony was talking about Trill League and the ups and downs and going through and trying to be passionate about something that you create that's good, that's really legitimately good. You got people not only like in your own head, like you hyping up yourself and saying that this thing is good, but you got this audience telling you how good it is. You're thinking that, okay, I can just go from here to there and this thing shouldn't be so difficult. But oftentimes you're talking to a group of people that don't have the same sensibilities as the fan base. And then what do? When the gatekeeper doesn't see it the way that the fan base does? And then they're asking you to change it, even if they say yes, and they say yes with an asterisk, and they're asking you to change the thing that everybody loves and appreciates and respects to what they think it might be. And then if you do it, you know it's not the thing that ultimately got you in the room, and it's not the things that the fans respond to. And if you don't do it, you won't have a deal. You got to go someplace else. And so it's just being able to navigate all of that stuff emotionally, psychologically, financially. All of that is a really, really difficult thing. And it's a joke, but it's still true. You know, I've had a therapist for years. She has heard everything. And the weird thing about therapists is sometimes I say the same thing week after week after week. And I apologize to her. It's like, I know that I said this last week, but just thank you for hearing me again. But oftentimes, the hardest thing to do is manage yourself and to stay sane within an environment that will task you and sometimes bring out the worst aspects of you, because it's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. And just the work in being an artist in and of itself is difficult enough. To continuously create is difficult enough. But being able to emotionally manage yourself along the way and psychologically manage yourself along the way is a test as well.
Yes, like 1,000 yeses to everything Rodney just said. Like, I think I was telling TJ the story where I think this was like before the pandemic, and I can't say who, but someone who a significant star.
Can I say who it is? Because I know this story. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, but like really quickly, you know, they wanted this person to play. They were offering me like more money than I've ever seen before in my entire life, for this person to play Harriet Tubman, and for their production company to have film and TV rights. And, you know, this famous person is, you know, a famous singer who is not, if I can put it politely, not an actress, and also not the right skin tone for
a rapper.
Dark.
Go ahead. I've got the rapper casting thing too, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's all right. No, like I just said, like, hey, like, because usually I'm like, all right, let me threaten them with Black Twitter, and then they'll calm down. You know, that's like my default thing. I'm like, yeah, Black Twitter is not going to like this, and they calm down. But this, there was no, it was like they were living in a different world. So again, the pressure of, you know, I was living in New York City at the time, and I was about to be evicted from my apartment, and there was this offer. And hilariously, you know, my lawyer at the time just said, hey, like, I know this is a lot of money. I know you need it, but how will you feel about this 10 years down the line? Mm-hmm. Because it was one of those things where it's like,
you should keep that person in your life. You should keep that person in your life. That's a good person to have.
Oh yeah, she's like not only like my lawyer, but my big sister. She's no longer my lawyer, not because she's a bad lawyer. She got promoted and got really busy. But where her and I are still in touch, and she said, hey, like, and again, like, she gets 5%, you know, right. Yeah. of this giant check. Again, more money than I've ever seen before. And, you know, I wasn't gonna like just say straight up no, but I try to like talk them around that idea. Just, hey, what if they're just a producer in name? You know, what if they do the soundtrack? Like, the soundtrack would be really cool. I would listen to the hell out of a Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer soundtrack by your client. And they're like, yeah, no dice, and really meditate on what my lawyer said. And then very humbly, my mom just said, hey, like, I think I said, so I was venting to my mom. I'm like, if I do this, I have nothing. And she's like, you'll always have us. Like, we're always, she was like pointing to like my sisters, my stepfather. It's like, you'll always have us, and you'll always have yourself. And if you can't afford your apartment, like, come live with us until we figure it out. Or, you know, maybe someone better suited for you comes around. And I was like, okay. So I went and just had the conversation, and they were not budging on it. And they said, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. And I don't think this is not only in my best interest, but the IP's best interest. And also, I don't think it's in your client's best interest. But thank you so much for your time. And
Lil Kim would not have made a good Harriet Tubman. I don't think she would. There's no.
Yeah. I agree too.
With a pump.
It was like just walk, and that was a strong ass walk, everybody. That was a long ass night.
Yeah.
That was a long night. And then just I moved back in with my family, and then pandemic happened, so I was going to live there regardless. But now we're in a much better situation that I'm very grateful for. But just really listening to those people that are Team You, and also not really listening to the outside of like, yes, money is important. I enjoy, hot water and food. But again, keeping the integrity of what you created, it's not easy. It's the story I just told, I know I made it really funny and it's silly, but that was a very stressful, not easy 18 days in my life in 2019. But yeah, keep people around you that are Team You.
Yeah, David, how are we doing on time for you, man? And do you have to bounce now for your other joint? Because you can if you need to. You can bounce anytime you have to.
Yes, I gotta bounce in like 2 minutes.
Gotcha. But yeah, any parting, since you got to leave, just any parting words, and I want to jump to Anthony because I want to get Anthony's perspective on, working in the industry. But before you go, David, any parting words for young and up and coming creators that want to get in this business of comics and film?
Yeah, keep people around you that are Team You and that are Team Your Dreams and Team Your Best Interests. Even when you don't want to do the work or do those things. I'm not gonna lie, everybody. Like the story I just told, at first I was like, maybe I can teach little Kim how to act. It's not little
Puffy
Kim.
did, Puffy did it. I can do it.
He's like, yeah, like maybe I can figure something out. But a friend, like my lawyer and my friend, was just like, no, this isn't it. Like this really isn't it. Yeah, no. So keep those people close around you, and also follow as much as you can what inspires you. But also, this is like, I see writing now as like a muscle, and my laptop, my notepad, like, this is my gym right here, and I have to work it as much as I can, at least 3 to 4 times a week for a couple hours. So devote, even when you don't feel like it, I promise you, as you go into it 5 or 10 minutes in, it'll feel like you're crawling through glass and shit, broken glass and shit and cold. But then you'll get into like a runner's high of it, and then things will start to inform you, and you'll have new epiphanies, and you'll not only be creating but also discovering. And that's a really awesome place to be. And then you'll read it and say, this sucks. And then you'll have to work with your editor to focus it and narrow it. But yeah, keep people that are Team You, treat this like a gym, focus on creating and writing. The agents, the managers will all find you because of the work you're doing. And that's it. That's the best I got. I got to jump to this other thing right now, but everyone, gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Let's all hang out when I'm in LA full time, please and thank you. And thank you, Schomburg. Thank you, TJ. And y'all have a great night. I gotta run.
Yeah, quickly drop your socials, man. Your social, please.
Yes, socials. Follow me, everybody, at D Crownson. Follow my company, Kingwood Comics, at Kingwood_comics. Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer is going to be a TV show produced by Prentice Penny and Sebastian Jones through Disney's Honest Collective. Most likely will probably be on Hulu. And Get Nightmare in Newark, which comes out on, which will be released in June, which is like a fun horror comedy story. But yeah, that's me. Bye, everybody. Am I good to go? Am I good?
Yes, sir. Peace. Later, man.
Later.
All right. Peace, guys. Thank you. Good seeing you.
Likewise.
All right. Appreciate you guys hanging out for a little while longer. Anthony, please jump in, man. Piggybacking off of what Rodney was talking about in terms of the industry, managers, representation. You and I have talked about being in writers' rooms, and we've talked about how you are navigating this thing that's going on in LA. I can tell everybody who's watching this, from someone who moved from New York to LA, there's a humongous difference in culture. There's a humongous difference in energy and vibes. People even drive frustrated out here. It's a whole thing, man. And it's literally it. When Rodney talks about LA, Los Angeles, the collective testing you, it's a real thing. So Anthony, talk a little bit about what your experiences are, man.
I mean, I haven't participated in a writer's room yet. I mean, most of the only writing that I've done for television, even remotely close, was for the Quibi series, and we were just doing development, so we wrote 10 scripts, 10-minute episodes, and that was the closest I've ever come. I've never actually participated in a real writer's room. So, I'm still going through the journey myself, and, I'm able to kind of balance both sides. So the writing thing, I've just started to, gain interest in it. Not only from the perspective of being able to, entertain people, make people laugh. I know that's like the genesis of actually starting a television show. You have to be a writer producer before you get anything started. So, me starting to get my mindset toward that, and I'm enjoying it. It's an art in itself, learning how to write, learning how to, tell jokes, execute them, tell a story. But also the pay too. The pay is, I've been on the art side, like I said, I've worked in comics, I've worked in animation, and, I've seen the pay discrepancy, so it's like, I would say you can live somewhat comfortably, and that's what my struggle has sort of been really is, kind of overloading myself as an artist, just because, like I said, I wasn't working in mainstream. I wasn't capable of being able to do mainstream, and particularly working for producing Black comics that are for a primarily Black fan base. There's not necessarily a lot of money in that. It's difficult to, navigate in those waters, just because, our core audience isn't as wide as, the white or Asian audience, or people who particularly like, sort of mainstream comics or anime. So it's difficult. So, for myself as a business person, I've had to, sort of just kind of always wear different hats, whether, like I said, working in comics, whether it's working, producing my own comics, or, working for different brands. I've done, a lot of, promotional work for different companies like Brisk. Who else have I worked for? Complex, so I've, and I mean, it's benefited me greatly, just because in the sense that, I've been able to like take all those different things and just combine them, and, understanding marketing, understanding how to create like a very, attractive package that would, when people look at, your book, when, they're looking at the bookshelves of all these books, what is going to be attractive to them, But yeah, I mean, that's just been sort of my journey right now. And I'm still in the beginning stages of the writing thing. So, like I say, my co-writer, Leanne, she's worked on Dear White People. She was a co-producer on Ted Lasso. And, I've been enjoying working with her. She's teaching me the ropes, and, hopefully if the series gets greenlit, I'll be able to start, gaining that experience. And ultimately I think what my ultimate goal is, is to create my own studio for Black artists, just because, even though I think, I'll move into the writing, I'm moving into the writing phase, of my career, I still have a soft spot in my heart for artists, and particularly Black artists, young Black artists. And I don't see, and I understand what it means to want to be able to illustrate characters and draw for a living, and having to just make time for that while you do, your 9 to 5. When I was working, changing oil on cars, I was working 50 hours a week, coming home dirty hands. So I had to, take a shower, then I would, draw at night from 7 to 11, midnight, and repeat. And so I know there's not a lot of opportunity for, Black artists who want to draw characters that look like them. So, I'm hoping that, if I'm given the opportunity, I can start a Black studio, for Black artists, and, sort of create that that pipeline for, you know, young Black creatives to be able to get their ideas out. And, you know, whether that is produced comics or short film or whatever, you know, that's the mindset that I'm coming from, is, you know, being an artist and just understanding, you know, the struggles that it takes to create characters or content that reflects, you know, our stories and our people.
Hey man, thanks for sharing that, man. And yeah, I want to quickly just do a quick time check. We are over our hour limit, but we can continue for a little while longer if you guys have a little bit more time, because we are, you know, Riley came
I
to the
got about
party.
10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? Perfect. Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Rodney. Riley, quickly tell us a little bit about what you do as a creator, filmmaker, comic book writer. I believe you also, or do you act a little bit too, or did I misinterpret that? I think you're muted, man.
Hey, TJ. Yeah, I don't act. I'm mostly behind the camera, but thank you for having me. Love to Schomburg Center for facilitating. But yeah, again, my name is Riley Wilson. I'm the founder and creator of Little Apple Universe, which is an experiential company that bundles media products, comics, and TV for educational institutions. And so, you know, my experience has, you know, I started out as a writer by trade, first reporting on agency and digital on a publication side, and then translating my first books into film work. And so my first novella into a film, and then my first comic book into a film. My first comic book was Little Apple, and that's how I started Little Apple Universe. And so what was your original question?
I was just saying, obviously, tell us about, you know, just what, you know, your universe, what you're working on, Little Apple. I mean, you do so many great things, man. I mean, I know you're a vendor for the Department of Education. You do some great stuff with them. Little Apple is also a tool that's used in schools for kids. So, I mean, you know, like all of the details, man. There's so many good things that you've done. I know you premiered at film festivals before and won lots of awards. So, yeah, tell us more, man, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know you guys have been talking about sort of like the traditional track of, you know, getting into Hollywood and TV. I kind of took I guess to Mr. Barnes' point, I went to the other side, and most of my traction came from social media originally, posting just, you know, a 60-second trailer of my series Little Apple and the comic book. And that's how I got most of the attention from, I guess, Hollywood, and got my foot in the door. And so Little Apple Universe sort of like took that steam from my last appearance at the Schomburg, where I shared that trailer. And I was able to become a vendor with the Department of Education, where we bundle streaming experiences with comic products and racial and social justice curriculum. And so the point of that is to sort of reshape how, you know, we've been to school before. We, you know, experienced with the Magic School Bus and Schoolhouse Rock and sort of like these IPs that were sort of organic to our educational experiences, but also helped us in some ways, whether it's learning how to spell or, you know, learning how to vote. And so the point of Little Apple Universe is to sort of take that same idea, but, you know, translate it using Afrofuturism and comics and superheroes featuring little Black girls and boys. And sorry, I'm in New York, you guys. And use those sort of like topics as sort of like as a launching pad for how young folks can now engage with racial and social justice topics around, you know, feminism, around, you know, gender nonconformity, around even what we're talking about now is banned books and trans rights and identity. And so even as we talk about, you know, critical race theory and sort of like how students and teachers are navigating these conversations, I think there's an extremely opportunity for comics and writers and folks who are sort of like in these, you know, animated storytelling spaces to tap in and reshape how we engage young people in that way. And Little Apple Universe is exploring that.
Incredible, incredible. And what the superpower that you gave Little Apple in the comic books, because I mean I'm a comic book guy. That's how I first, you know, got in touch with you, and I was looking at your art and really what you had created, and then I obviously saw the film when I came to the premiere in person, and it was just such an incredible. You picked an incredible actress. Milan is really special, and then just the team that you have behind the film production, and the fact that you taught yourself VX is really, really impressive. So to me, like, it's just one of those stories that just has such like a lot of legs. Like, it can really, really go somewhere, you know, whether it's Oscars or whatever awards or whatever you want to do with it. It just has so many possibilities. So yeah, I mean, talk a little bit about the gentrification that Little Apple, you know, just really targets or even discusses in that story and that the book as well as the TV the show.
Yeah, I mean, Little Apple is, you know, a daughter of Harlem, and I think that that's probably why, you know, screening at the Schomburg was such a huge opportunity, because she is a Harlem hero, and her powers, or the genesis of her story started, you know, starts with her noticing changes in her community, you know, not just from the demographic, but from the infrastructure and sort of the culture of it. And so I mean, we're not fresh cookies out of the oven. We know what, you know, sort of like the onslaught of gentrification over the years and sort of like the implications associated with that. And so Little Apple's powers is called claircognizance, which is the ability to know things without having any understanding how you know them, kind of like clairvoyance, but of the mind. And so this manifests in her a way to know information, like sort of like downloading it organically, but also her ability to see aura and energy and changes of energy. And so that manifests in multiple ways when you're talking about, you know, gentrification, because gentrification is, when we speak about gentrification, it's not just the change in infrastructure, it's the change in culture in the community. And so that inherently changes the energy and sort of like the way people live in their everyday life. So that's sort of like how her powers come to be and how she sort of like taps in that first season.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. I want to quickly jump to Rodney because I know he's got to bounce pretty soon, and we're going to probably cut off everything at 6:30. Rodney, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite experiences working on TV. You've worked on so many things, whether it's My Wife and Kids or Boondocks or you know, your comics like Falcon Quincredible. Like, just tell us some about your favorite projects that you're working on. Anything you can talk about that you're working on after Blacula as well. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in regards to TV, I'm doing the Jack Johnson story for HBO miniseries. Pretty excited about that. When it comes to Blacula, Volume 2, I'm trying to pair Blacula and John Shaft from the Blaxploitation era and get those two characters together. Think I got a story. I'm not exactly positive, but I'm working on it. You know, a lot of cool stuff. Maybe Gil Scott-Heron movie I've got in development, and just a bunch of different things. I mean, if you're talking about the history of the things that I've done, they've all sort of been different, and I've sort of grown with each one. I think the first 10 years of my career were sort of kind of like boot camp, those sitcoms, because sitcoms are like factory work in a way. You're going to make a show every week, you know, whether it's great, good, someplace in between. And you have to learn, it's like a job. You know, it's the closest thing to having a 9-to-5 that I've ever comparatively had in the business. And so you had to learn to kind of discipline yourself to a schedule. And drama, not so much. Even though we do have a writer's room, or we did, you know, for a short period of time, much of the writing is done outside of that. And for movies, you have to create your own infrastructure. So with every job, there's sort of been something that I've been able to take away from it, whether it was a positive experience or not as positive as I would have liked it to be. There's always a lesson somewhere that I take away from it, and hopefully have grown to a place where I'm able to take on more. You know, it was funny, my manager said to me, I was having a particularly difficult day about a month or so ago, and he said, just remember, it never gets easier. They pay you more, but it never gets easier. And that is absolutely the truth. You think that at a certain point, when you get more or you have more experience or you move up further and further and further in the business, that it gets easier. That actually doesn't. More is demanded of you, but you hopefully, with experience and time and you know, the evolution of yourself as a person, you become better able to handle the things that are presented to you and the difficulties that come your way. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Rodney. It's a pleasure. You've dropped some serious gems. If you ever write a Swamp Thing comic, I want to put the first
I got
bid
close.
in.
I got
So,
close.
really?
The Batman thing was going to have Swamp Thing in it, but yes,
Oh,
I got real
man.
close. I got perilously close, but
Well,
yeah.
if you end up writing it, I want to draw it. I'm just putting my bid in right now. For the record, it's recorded right here.
There you go.
But
There you go.
yeah, please share your social medias with us so people can follow your page, check out what you're doing, and obviously support Blacula and Philadelphia and any other comic books that you've done.
Yeah. First, thank the Schomburg Center as well, and UTJ and everybody else. I'm at the Rodney Barnes on Twitter and Instagram, zombielovestudios.com, rodneybarnes.com. Don't nobody go to Facebook, but you can find me there too. Just my friends from high school. But yeah, that's sort of where you can find me, and hopefully find some stuff that you enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rodney.
Thanks,
Appreciate
TJ,
you, man.
Riley, Anthony, David. If you watch this back, bye to you too. And hopefully we'll talk soon. All right. Take it easy, guys.
Take care.
Take care.
Yeah.
Anthony, please, man, if you got anything else to add, please jump in, or if you got to jump off as well, just, you know, hit us with the socials, let us know where everybody can find you, how they can purchase True League Volume 1 and number 2, and support anything else that you're working on.
Currently, at the moment, I don't have anything for sale just because I'm kind of revamping my website, getting some stock ready, which, you know, I might have some for the Motor City Con. We got to discuss that. But it'll be ready by the end of the year, you know. Volume 1 and Volume 2, I've got a lot of emails, you know, asking about that. So if you want to follow me on social media, you know, you can follow me. I'm mostly active on IG, even though right now I'm kind of a little bit on a hiatus, but, you know, that's probably the place you can get in touch with me the easiest. And that is ant_Piper. And then my email, if you have any questions, you know, regarding, like, you know, advice on comic book stuff or, you know, portfolio stuff, you can hit me up at anthony@anthonypiper.com.
Perfection. Yeah, guys, everybody knows about True League, but if for some reason you do not know, find this book, download it, get the PDF, push Anthony to print more copies so you can have a copy in your collection.
Pushing piracy right now, man. You pushing piracy, man. I know it's some pirated. I know it's some bootleg versions out there.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen
Wow,
it.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I've seen them.
You know, it's like crack. And
So you
people
can
really
technically
want
find
it.
it if you want to find it, but, you know, support a struggling independent artist.
That's what I'm saying. Like, get the digital version from Anthony if he's got it. If he doesn't, just wait for the printed one. It's worth the wait, straight up.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate you, bro, for stopping by. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in May.
All right, you guys too. Thank you for having me on.
Riley. So last we hear, man, it's just us. So basically in the beginning of the chat, we just were talking about inspirations and what brought you to comics, and Rodney was inspired by film, so that brought him to film, but he eventually circled back to comics. So just a little bit more about you, what you're about, where people can find you, and how they can support Little Apple and all the stuff that you have for sale and your products and whatnot.
Yeah, I'll be quick. if you want to support Little Apple Universe, you can always go to littleappleuniverse.com. And we're not necessarily pushing a sale right now with schools. We're more so interested in onboarding new schools and sharing Little Apple with them through screenings. And so if you're interested in bringing Little Apple to your school, if you're interested in your child experiencing Little Apple, or you as an individual, you can always go to our website, littleappleuniverse.com, and register for a screening for your organization, or for you as an individual, or for your school. And so that's what we're doing for this year. We're bringing 2 new shows to the platform to have 3 shows for next year. One show is obviously Little Apple, which is also in development as a feature film. And the other 2 shows is our Afro Eye, which is basically a daily show for young folks. And it features a young host from Brooklyn, a Brooklyn art school. And she basically is talking about, different topics that concern young folks. So whether we're talking about banned books, as I mentioned before, or racial and social justice topics that center young Afrofuturist perspectives. The other show is called Cookie Crunch Club, which is a mystery dramedy featuring 3 rambunctious young people who start up a secret detective agency using a cookie selling club as a cover. We're currently in production for that, and are going to be sharing first looks of both Afro Eye and Cookie Crunch Club at the Schomburg next week. So.
Incredible. So, guys, everybody's watching the panel now. This panel will most likely premiere after or during the Schomburg, whether it's Friday or Saturday. So, if you're watching it before you get there, come visit myself. David Crownson will be in the building. Riley S. Wilson will be there, and a host of absolutely amazing panelists, artists, writers, creators. Come to the Schomburg. It's absolutely free. I encourage you guys to really, really just come through, support this event. It has been virtual for the last 2 years, since 2020, right before the pandemic. It's been completely virtual. So now we are back to being in a physical space. It's super, super important that you guys show up. So pull up to the Schomburg April 14th through 15th, 2023, next week, Friday and Saturday. Mark your calendars, be there. You do not want to miss it. So if anybody wants to follow myself and the stuff that we do at Ray Comics, we make Black comic books about amazing, exciting, and uplifting characters. I'm at RAE Comics. Or if you want to follow me, I'm at TJ Sterling Art, raecomics.com. And if you want to follow everything Schomburg, which you should be doing, it's schomcom.org. And that is schomcom.org. Quickly find us there, and you can see panels, not only this panel, but many other amazing panels from the previous years that were either recorded virtually or in person. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you to all of our amazing panelists. Riley, thank you so much for the time, and I will see you next week and see everyone else next week as well. Take care, guys.
See ya.